name's John Palmer. I'm one of the co-founders of Indy Social Media. Chuck Rose is my counterpart. Thanks everybody for coming here today. It's like darker than it usually is, which always makes it a little harder to get up, but I feel like, we're at that time of year and it's the way it works. I wanted to just kind of dive right in here with a couple of our sponsors who help make this event possible. First and foremost is the 12 Stars fan section right here. 12 Stars Media has been with us pretty much since the very beginning. We've been doing this for, 4 or 5 years now. And they've been to every event we've had, and they've been dutifully reporting it. It's been kind of cool to see, just Rocky and Zach get started, and as we've grown over the years, they've grown too. And I think that's just a great testament to what some of the business opportunities are that are in Indianapolis. Really, anybody can start anything. So that's pretty great. If you have video needs, they've been great with us, and you guys should certainly feel free to reach out to them. So that's 12 Stars. A little round of applause for those guys. I also wanted to give a big thanks to Circle City Sweets. They were kind enough to provide all the holy cow, fruits and pastries, and I haven't been able to absorb and process everything that's over there. So they're great. There should be flyers that are on all your seats. If you didn't get one, or yours relocated itself, there's still some on the counter on the way out. That flyer will entitle you to a 10% discount on any catering from them. So buy local, all that good stuff. They've been great to work with as well. They've worked with us for a couple of events. So feel free, if you guys have coworkers that need to putting on some kind of work meeting or offsite event or whatever it would be, reach their way. They deliver, and it just makes everything very easy for us. So that's great. Last but not least, I wanted to introduce Lorraine Ball, one of the board members on the Indy Fringe board, to kind of give a few words about Indy Fringe.
Morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I know those of you know me, some of you know me from my other life. Indy Fringe is a passion for me. If you're not familiar, the festival has celebrated our 10th year this year. It is a place where new performers, new directors, new actors get a chance to showcase their work. There are fringe festivals all over the United States, all over the world, but very few have a permanent home. We are one of the few festivals that has our own home. We're very proud to own this building. If you could have seen what it looked like when we first started versus what it is today, it's been a huge change for us. In terms of economic impact, we have returned more than $1 million to performers over the last 10 years. That is huge for a festival like this. We are now beginning phase 2 of our expansion. You may have noticed some of the construction. And my own personal portion of the program is we need toilets. In case you've noticed, there is one bathroom in this building. When you have a performance and you have one bathroom, it kind of puts a little bit of a slow to the show. So, we are wishing for a loo. We have a wishing loo. If you have change in your pocket, we would love you to make a wish with us. If, like many millennials, you do not have actual money on you, that's okay. We have a campaign. Please look on Twitter for #WishingLou. You'll go to the campaign. Any amount is acceptable. For $10, we will post your wish on our website. For $250, we will put a plaque with your name and your wish above the loo. Thank you so much for coming today.
Never thought you'd come in the morning and be talking about a toilet that you throw change in. But we're really excited about this initiative. And I was actually talking earlier with these guys and saying, when Chuck and I first started out, it was actually really hard to find a venue. We hit up a couple of hotels. We weren't really sure how we were going to do this. And we ended up at the Humanities Council building, which we obviously quickly outgrew, but we had about 30 people at our very first event. And things just kind of started rolling after that, and suddenly we thought, we could really make a thing out of kind of featuring art spaces and nonprofits. There's a lot of good locations and a lot of good organizations that really need kind of that presence. So, you know, in the spirit of that, you know, this has always been something we've been passionate about. A lot of the folks who came here today, they pay what it's worth tickets, and you know, that's been an experiment for us. You know, we've always done like $5 and $6 tickets. This time around, we kind of said, well, you know, whatever we take in above whatever our normal take would be for that, you know, $6 level, we'd actually like to take and put towards this initiative. So we'll be making a donation for $150. It's not much, but it's, you know, something towards kind of getting you guys a kick started.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Anyways, everybody's heard that Jim Irsay's back on Twitter. Hopefully you're all excited about that. There's a lot of craziness that comes from that kind of thing. He's obviously hilarious to watch on Twitter, but so is Chris Tyson, who's going to be our MC today. So, Chris, I wanted to set you up here. Chris is going to be moderating the panel, and I'll just let you take it from here, man.
Sounds good, thanks.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Never been compared to Jim Irsay in a bank account, but glad I can be as funny as him. I even tried to shave today, so I matched my Twitter avatar for people. Couldn't let Derek McClain be the only bald guy in the house, so I had to support him. So real quickly, just kind of a little bit of background on the event. As Lorraine mentioned, there's a construction going on behind, and you may have seen up front the sign. Tom and everybody and Molly here with Indy 11 actually have naming rights for the new addition. So that's kind of, one, that's why we wanted to have it here, but two, it kind of ties into the whole community marketing, community engagement feel to the event. Indy Fringe, as I was talking with Pauline, the executive director, started the same way that we started, just a community need for something. A bunch of people got together and said we should do this. John and Chuck got together and said we should do it in the social media thing. So it's a good venue because it ties in perfectly. Indy 11 has donated generously to get the naming rights and to help support the cause over there. So that's kind of why we have the venue. And as you've seen in some of the communication around the event, the impetus for this really has been what Indy 11 and the Brickyard Battalion, actually before them, we'll get into that, really started with community engagement, community marketing, social media, and really just getting a lot of people together for a common cause. So being a newly minted soccer fan and in marketing, I've been glued to what they've been all doing. Kind of actually originated with the Brickyard Battalion a couple years back, got involved in what they were doing on Facebook through some friends and just paid attention ever since and been greatly impressed. And has led to their success definitely in the box office. Had some more success on the field on the pitch the last couple games. So we kind of wanted to bring them together, talk about how this whole thing started, how it's gone from complete grassroots to every home game in the league has been a sellout, which I believe is a record for any soccer franchise in North America, or
first time it's ever been done in the United States
in
by
the United
a
States,
team to sell out all its games in its inaugural season.
So congratulations Indianapolis for supporting them, and we'll kind of give some background on how they do it. So real quick on the panel, next to me I have Tom Dunmore, the VP of Marketing and Ops with Indy 11, Molly Kruger, their marketing coordinator. Molly's been on board since day one with them as well, and then Josh Mason with the Brickyard Battalion fan group. He is one of the co-founders. So we're going to start you off here with a little video. So if you, actually, a show of hands, who has been to a game? Show of hands. Awesome. So a quarter to half. Good. So some of you that, yeah, I can show you. So some of you that have not been. So the background on that, obviously, that was taken in the Brickyard Battalion section, which Josh is a co-founder of. If you're not familiar with soccer, most teams have a very rabid fan base, and there's usually a smaller group of that overall fan base that goes to games, chants the absolute entire time. That part was really fun. I took my 6-year-old son to the game, and as we were leaving the stadium, it's on IUPUI's campus there, we were actually walking back to our car. He's chanting, this is 2 hours later, right? He's 6 years old. I'm surprised he wasn't sleeping. He's doing that chant. As we walk by a parking garage, somebody in the garage hears him and starts the call back and starts doing the chant with him. So the power of the community of that Brickyard Battalion section, even Chuck Ghost, our co-founder who's not here, who's noted not a soccer fan, that's why, it's not why he skipped, but he actually went to a game and commented how the atmosphere was brought on by the Brickyard Battalion, how he actually enjoyed himself at a soccer game. He wasn't going into it expecting to enjoy it, and he really did, due to a lot of what the Brickyard Battalion brings. So with that said, you may or may not be aware of the history of actually the groups. You see Racing Indy FC up there. That was actually the name that Josh's group brought into the fray years before Indy 11 actually kind of started. So Josh, if you don't mind kind of giving some background on the formation of what was then Racing Indy FC on Facebook, and just the Brickyard Battalion, and kind of how that's all transition and time frame and everything.
So good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Joshua Mason. I'm married with 4 kids. I'm 37 years old, and the fact I have any time to do any of this stuff is damn near a miracle. So if any of you guys see my wife or know my wife, I think only Doug in this room is the only person who's ever met my wife on the other side than Tom. Send her a thank you note, whatever it takes to make sure I can continue to do this, because over time I think it's going to get pulled from me just by default, right? So a little bit about the history of the BYB, right? Kind of how we came to fruition. Nerdy is all get out, let's be real, right? So we were basically playing fantasy soccer online in a lot of ways, right? I've been playing since I was 4 years old. It's been my passion for a long period of time. And someone who grew up in Indiana, I was born in '77, so high school soccer wasn't even sanctioned, right? It wasn't until my junior year when IHSAA even sanctioned soccer and recognized it as a sport within the world of high school soccer. So if you're playing soccer, it was like because you didn't play football or you didn't play the other fall sports, so to speak. So soccer in general, in Indiana wasn't exactly at a good place. So I was watching professional soccer via VHS because I didn't have cable growing up. So you can judge me. I'm an East Side kid. Anybody WC people in this place? Warren Central represent? Anyone? No one? Really? Everybody hates the East Side nowadays? What's going on, people? And so soccer really didn't have a place, right? If you're watching soccer, you're watching it because the ESPN happened to feature it, because they had to fill programming. Here's the FA Cup, and you watch the FA Cup. So I chose a team long ago. I won't tell you who it was because it offends Tom. So I chose an EPL team, and I kind of got into soccer that way. So it's been a passion of mine for a long period of time. The advent of social media, you now have a way to coalesce people and same with like ideas. Back in the day, I think you'd had conventions for that, right? You had to go someplace in one area and we all like clown erotica, so we all get together and watch clown erotica, whatever it is, right? If you guys are laughing because you might be into it, and I'm judging you now in my head. So you would go, and that's what you would get. You'd go to the convention, you'd be with like-minded people, you'd share ideas, and you'd go home. Well, with the invention of social media, for us in particular, we had the ability to use Facebook and Twitter to really coalesce people within our state to say, who's really interested and passionate about soccer? It really helps when you have places like Union Jack and Chatham Tap who are trying to bring that social, that place of social gathering as well. So through social media, we're trying to attract as many people as we can through soccer events, whatever it was, whether it be coaching, whether it be clubs, whether it be indoor facilities, that we could coalesce and say, who wants professional soccer in Indiana? And if we did have professional soccer in Indiana, what would it look like? And so we had people, everything from graphic artists who were chiming in to people who were doing stadium design, and just having this fictional conversation online as to what it could look like. Not knowing that Ursal existed necessarily. We knew who he was. I think a lot of us knew in the community knew who he was, because actually Ursal was a player. Ursal was a guy that I knew from playing outdoor. So I knew Ursal for almost 10 plus years. But I didn't know he worked for Keystone, nor did he own a company or anything along those lines. But I said we use the Facebook platform more than anything else to really say who is interested. And this clicking the like button and having those consistent conversations of what it could look like really generates some enthusiasm. And so that was now almost 4 years ago when we started that platform. It really helps that we had a guy named Derek Ritchie. Some of you might know Derek, he's from Bloomington. He runs a lot of social media things down in Bloomington. Derek and Brett, who had their own video webcast, if you will, talking about soccer. So they were coalescing and creating a group of people and bringing it to the forefront as well. And just really figuring out how could this really happen. And little did I know that Peter and Ursal and people were watching the work that we were doing. Again, you see the logo. I mean, if to kind of look at the history of the logo. So Racing Indy FC, what does that really mean? If you look at clubs in South America, there's actually racing clubs. So we're trying to play off the themes of what you see in South America. There's racing, is what it's called in South America, but it's not only soccer down there. It's swim clubs. It's all under one roof, if you will. It's all one club. And so we're thinking, oh, it'd be cool. We'll just kind of play off into Racing Indy FC. Well, I'm sure the Motor Speedway didn't really love our idea. But surprisingly enough, the Motor Speedway did give us their blessing to use the Brickyard Battalion. So even when the advent of the team came to fruition, I think there was a conversation, but it may have taken place with the IMS, and it probably would have been a little bit of conflict of interest. But when it came to the Brickyard Battalion aspect, they were very, very supportive and gave us their blessing to be able to use the Brickyard Battalion moniker. So that's why it's kind of rolled over into what you see today. And the Brickyard Battalion being with Indy 11. That's how the coalition of those two groups kind of came together. So it's a little bit of good history there. Does that make sense?
That's
good. Yeah. You guys write all that down?
Yeah.
There'll be a quiz.
There'll be a test afterwards. And that's kind of what fascinated me about it. Like I said, I had friends involved in soccer, and that's how I knew of the group. There was a professional soccer match here in town, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
If you actually joined the Brickyard Battalion, you got pre-access. So I went to the game, joined. That's kind of how I got involved. But their group, a clear 2-3 years before the team formed, was there. And they said, like Josh said, hey, we got a lot of people that want to do this. They had a couple thousand likes on Facebook. And they were having conversations. And they said, we want this to happen. We want this to be here. Kind of like Indy Fringe. People knew it needed to be here. They got together and made it happen. And then Tom and Peter and Ursal came in and saw what they were doing. And if Tom kind of gives some input on kind of the formation of Indy 11, how it was Indy Pro Soccer before, and just how you guys partnered up with the Brickyard Battalion.
Sure. Ursal, who Josh mentioned, Ursal Ozdemir, the owner of the team, for those of you who don't know, he's the owner of Keystone Construction and Realty. And he's from Turkey originally, played soccer growing up, big soccer fan. Went to Purdue, got his engineering degree there, stuck around in Indiana since then and created a very successful business here. Always wanted a team, I think, for the last 5 or 10 years. Saw that Indy did not have a soccer team, and that's something he wanted his hometown to have, that he'd seen the passion for that, but he was very cautious about it. Unlike a lot of people who have invested in soccer over the past 30 years, he waited for the right moment. A lot of owners who have a little bit of money, they jump in, they spend a bunch of money, they realize it wasn't the right time, or they're not spending it smartly, they're losing a lot of money, and they get out and the team folds. And Indy had a couple of those experiences already, had a couple of pro teams that had failed. So Ursal really waited around, and a lot of the momentum that went into him finally making the decision to launch the team came from social media, from the Brickyard Battalion already existing. I remember when I first started hearing about the Brickyard Battalion, before I'd even heard of Ursal, just because it was starting to make waves in the soccer community. I was living in Chicago, and they were making waves in the soccer community by having a group that had such obvious support from the beginning. There had been a couple other places where supporters had preceded the team. In Philadelphia, the Sons of Ben supporters group was founded a couple of years before the MLS team there, the Philadelphia Union, and they were a huge factor in Philadelphia getting that MLS team, and the BYB were very much following in those footsteps and attracting attention. So obviously Ursal was paying attention to that, and he asked Peter Wilt, who is our team president and was the founding GM and president of the Chicago Fire in MLS, and been in the soccer business for many decades now, running several teams, winning a lot of championships, becoming known really as the fans GM, very down to earth. If you've ever met Peter, he's about the easiest person to have a conversation with about almost anything in the world. So he was available to come in and work as a consultant for Ursal. Peter was kind of between gigs. Peter and I were actually doing a podcast at the time ourselves where we were talking about the business of soccer. And Ursal asked Peter to come down as a consultant. Peter actually lives in Milwaukee, still lives in Milwaukee, but he comes down to Indy during the week and commutes home on the weekends when we don't have a home game. Don't know how he does it, to be honest, but he's kind of one of a kind. And Peter asked me to set up a website, indyprosoccer.com, to look at the appetite for soccer in Indianapolis to see if what the BYB were generating was really real. So we asked people to make pledges for season tickets. The only avenue we promoted that through was social media. We didn't have a media budget. We didn't have any paid media at the time. We didn't have a PR director. We weren't making phone calls to newspapers. Ursal might have made a few himself, but as an organization, that's all we had. So we set up the website, and within days we had hundreds of pledges for season tickets, and within a month or so I think we had a couple of thousand pledges, and we began what became a little bit of a charade that we were still looking to see if we were going to start a team, but really after those first couple of days and the outpouring of interest that we saw on social media and the website, we knew that this had to happen. The passion, the interest level was there. Ursal, he didn't tell us, but we knew he was going to do it. So it was really then getting ready to launch the team. He brought on Peter full time to come down and work for the team and purchase an expansion franchise in the North American Soccer League, which is the second tier of North American soccer underneath MLS, Major League Soccer. Though it's an independent league, professional league, it's not a feeder league to MLS the way the Indians are to Major League Baseball. So we own our players. They belong to Indy 11. They'll be here for years to come if they're good. And some of them from this year will be staying and some of them won't. But we're able to invest in significant players, world-class players. And we have Kleberson, who won the World Cup with Brazil in 2002 and played in the World Cup with Brazil again in 2010. We have some other national team players for other countries as well. So that whole process was really confirmed on January 16th, 2013, when it was announced that Indy was joining the North American Soccer League. We had an announcement at the JW Marriott. We had hundreds of people there, and the coolest thing about it for me on that day was behind Ursal and the commissioner of the league and Peter was the Brickyard Battalion, and they were already there with their scarves because they already had scarves. And they were ready to wave them, and they had their chance. And it's very rare that a professional sports team starts and already has a rabid fan base. And to get back to our topic, there's no way that would have existed if we hadn't been doing it when we did it with social media, allowing Josh and his group to get those people together and the team to facilitate and showcase that passion. And that meant that all the nightly newscasts, they all showed that passion. So it wasn't a dry press conference where we had three guys sitting in a room just saying they were starting a team and that there was going to be support. We had visual evidence of that was posted online and was on all the news broadcasts that evening. And I think that showed to Indianapolis that this was real. That first night, I remember checking on my phone. We were out at Chatham Tap for a celebration. It was packed. Ursal was on the bar giving a speech, and everyone was chanting and singing and waving their scarves, and I was frantically checking my phone to see how many season ticket deposits we'd taken, which we'd launched that day at 6 o'clock, and they were just pouring in. And there was literally hundreds were pouring in. By the end of the evening, we had 700 or 800 season ticket deposits. 10 months later, we cut off season tickets at 7,000, which was 5 months before we started actually playing any games. So that momentum was just really almost unprecedented. We've seen that momentum in one or two other places in the U.S., Kansas City recently, Portland, Seattle. But Indy, probably people in this town don't even realize it, but Indy is in that conversation as one of the most remarkable startup movements in North American soccer, which is what led to our sellout streak this year.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting that a full 5 months before, a couple years back, Josh and some people had to get together to say, hey, we even want to do this. And then 5 months before they even played a game, they already had 7,000 people willing to be on board with it. And from my view, a lot of that has to do with not only paying attention and listening online like Ursal was doing, like Tom in Chicago didn't even know that, Indy was even thinking about a team. Tom got wind of it. Peter got wind of it. I know, Josh, you have a quick story. Josh and Peter actually got together. Peter got wind of what was going on, I think kind of came into town, and Josh reached out on Twitter, if you don't mind sharing that.
So I was a Fire supporter initially, much like Tom, when the team came to fruition, because it was the closest MLS program I could get to. A lot of friends from Northwest Indiana, so going to games was pretty easy to get up there. This is when they played at Soldier Field before the Toyota Park was ever built. And so because of that, I started following Peter on Twitter, of all places. And if you've known Peter Wilt, or if any of you guys follow Peter Wilt, his handle is @PeterWilt1. He'd be happy for me to tell you that because he is consistently on Twitter. I'm not sure if he has a job, really. I think he's on Twitter full time. I think it is. I think you're right. And he had tweeted out he's in Indianapolis, and as me as a BYB, he's probably tweeting this right now. As me as a BYB member, I'm following him on Twitter, and he says I'm in Indianapolis, and of course it piques my interest. I'm like, why are you in my city? For whatever reason, you're in my city. And he tweets me back, and I tweeted him. I said, I'll buy you dinner. Where are you at? And we met at Chatham Tap and Fisher's. We watched a U.S. national men's qualifying game together. And just sat there quietly. Nobody knew who he was, except for, it's, again, the soccer community is a pretty small community for the most part, right? Either in or you're out in a lot of ways. It's not that it's not inclusive, it's just it's not like the NFL where if you're Andrew Luck and you walk into a bar, everybody in the place wants to buy you a beer, right? Everybody knows who those people are. Soccer's just a smaller community. So here I am sitting with Peter, nobody knows who he is, and we're sitting there talking about how he's intimating to me that there's an opportunity. And he asked me who I was involved with, and I happened to tell him I was with the Brickyard Battalion. He kind of already knew that I was with the Brickyard Battalion, so I'm not sure if he was playing some stealth mission thing with me. But it worked into a great conversation, the fact that it really, really energized the fact that this thing was really going to happen in our city. And so I started setting up meetings for him across the soccer community, the people that I knew well, because I was a coach and I do a lot of things, and I'm just heavily involved with the U.S. men's national team, the supporters group here for that, long before the team. And so I started setting up meetings for him to really make this thing real. And so have him go to indoor facilities, have him meet with soccer clubs, anybody who wanted to hear or talk about Indy Pro Soccer. And that's kind of how my real push really came into the BYB. So.
I think that's a great tie-in. While this is sports-based, we all are, for the most part, in marketing and digital, and listening is a big thing now. It's one of the big buzzes. It's always been something that good marketers and digital, and just good people in general do is listen, right? And I think not only did Peter and Saul and then Tom and Molly listen, and they listen really well, they actually act on what's going on. So they could have listened, they could have seen the group was there, they could have said, hey, great, they kind of pumped for us, and I'm Peter Wilt, and I founded a team. Tom has been involved with teams. I'm Saul, I'm a business owner, I know better than all them, I'm going to go and I'm going to run my business, right? And that's been absolutely the opposite of what's happened. So it's kind of hard to see. It's a little dark picture. I pulled this from actually, I think, the Brickyard Battalion Facebook page. You see, this is the coach here on the end, Peter in the middle, and I don't know who is on the other side.
Saul and Greg.
Is that Saul on the other side as well? Okay.
And Greg.
So this is actually taken at an event that the team did with the Brickyard Battalion. And what it was is they did a recap of 2014 and met with the Brickyard Battalion's kind of gold, the gold membership group, and talked about 2015. So not only did they listen for the formation of the team, throughout the whole year, the Brickyard Battalion's been involved, not in decision making, but they've been consulted with, I think. And they're continuing on the partnership. So they didn't just let it be there and take it from there and do their own thing. They've really partnered with them and listened to them. So Molly, if you don't mind speaking a little bit just about the partnership of Indy 11 and the Brickyard Battalion, and kind of how you guys have stayed together throughout the year and kind of worked together.
It's interesting because, so you have the Brickyard Battalion, but then you have subgroups. So there's help me out. These two guys are the Brickyard Battalion people, but Slaughterhouse 19.
Circle City Brigade.
Yep. Battery, there's quite a few different small groups, and certainly.
And they all kind of have like their own personality, so it's kind of interesting because you don't have to be one type of personality to be in the Brickyard Battalion. But kind of new to, I'm not new to soccer, but new to the business side. It's been interesting to see how much we really connect with the Brickyard Battalion and how many decisions are made with them right next to us. And of course, like, we're the full-time employees, but yet they're always in and outside of our office and always popping into Tom's office. I think Tom probably has the biggest connection with them because he had a big connection with the Chicago Fire. So it's just been interesting to watch it develop and grow and see how we've taken what what suggestions they've had and really turned it into something I think that is a really neat partnership and important.
And if you can kind of just expand on that too about how you guys are, still, like I said, keeping going with them, and so much as, hey, this is what we're doing for the future. With keeping them involved and keeping that community support going, and not resting on the fact that, hey, we've done great, now we know what we're doing. So
Yeah, the biggest risk, Peter and I talk about this a lot, is how could we mess this up? We got this great start, we sold out 14 games, we've got a great buzz. What can go wrong? What can we do that would ruin this? How would we be one of those teams that breaks its connection with the fan base, which a lot of teams unfortunately do. In soccer and in other sports, they take their fans for granted. They don't listen. They suddenly think they're the bee's knees and they have all the answers, and start drifting away from that organic fan base. As we grow as an organization, originally it was, our first office was me, Molly, and Peter in the back room of Ursal's office. We had one phone line and an intern, and yet we were getting hundreds, thousands of season tickets pouring in. We didn't even have to make a phone call. It was just ridiculous.
You didn't.
Yeah, Molly made some phone calls. But the risk is as you grow as an organization, and now we have 14 people, which is still small for a pro sports team, but 4 times bigger than we were not that long ago. The risk is we drift away. We don't connect with the BYB as much, or our other fan base. BYB represents more than just the crazy people in the West Stand. They have members around the stadium as well, a lot of whom came out to that event that we did on Saturday. They don't necessarily stand in the BYB, but they support the mission of the BYB and the atmosphere that's created. So our goal is to make sure that on a day-to-day basis and long-term planning that we are integrated with the BYB leadership, that we build on the success that we've had this year, and we're constantly aware that if we make a mistake and we don't fulfill something, we find a way to fix that. This event's actually a good example. We had this agreement with BYB that we would help promote certain events for their gold membership this year, which is their paid membership level. We help them promote it, help them sell the memberships for our season ticket sign-ups, and we've done some things throughout the year, but one member, BYB Gold member, actually wrote to me about a month ago and said, hey, it's been a great year, I've loved being part of it, it's been cool being a BYB Gold member, but I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't have as many events with the team as I thought we were going to have. And I talked with, I think, Gabe, who's one of the leaders of the BYB, along with Josh, and said, hey, what can we do to fix this? We don't have a lot of time this season, but we could still do something. And we came up with the idea of having this Q&A session with Ursal and Peter and Jürgen, our head coach, and giving the BYB Gold members that exclusive chance to come in and talk to them and put it together quickly, as we often do at Indy 11 and with the BYB's help. But it was a good way of saying, hey, and wrote back to the guy and said, hey, we're sorry, we should have done more. It's no excuse that it's been a busy year. We still should have made sure those events will happen, and here's what we're going to do. And we put the event together. It was a rainy, tough day, but we still pulled off the event before our last home game. So it's things like that where you're being honest, open, working with the BYB leadership, being open with fans, and admitting when you've got something not quite right and finding a way to fix it. And that can go much further even than actually getting it right in the first place, because it shows that you are listening to your point earlier, and you're actually acting on it. You're not just saying, on social media, you're not just saying, that's a good point. You actually go out and take some action, have an event, and fulfill that promise to make up for something that maybe wasn't as good as it should have been in the first place. And in your early years, you're bound to have those stumbles, and in fact, it'll always happen. But it's how you react and then fulfill on those promises that the fans really pay attention to, and that can earn you more credit than actually doing it in the first place, which we found with a couple of different things this year. So our goal is always to get it right the first time, but if we don't, working with the BYB and making sure we do get it right.
Hey, Jordan, if you don't mind going forward too, actually, I'm going to actually skip ahead to one based off of what Tom was just saying about communication and getting it right and being open and transparent. We had a conversation prior to the event a couple weeks back, and Tom mentioned about the first game, and it's all really good to be out in front and use social and interact, but that also opens you up to criticism, which they've actually used to their advantage. And so after the first game, there were some issues. You know, the stadium's not theirs. They're kind of retrofitting with what's going on there at IUPUI. And so there was a lot of feedback based off the first game. So if you don't mind kind of sharing, it's a good segue into that part of what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, that's very similar, but this was on a whole nother scale. You know, we, after our first game, which was beyond sold out, we packed every last human being we could fit into that facility based on the demand, and it was fantastic. But our stadium, Carroll Stadium at IUPUI, hadn't had a major event for about 20, 30 years. It doesn't have any facilities of its own. We came in a couple of months and we rebuilt as much as we could. We built suites, we brought in bathrooms, we built 8 concession stands because it didn't have any. And people kind of expect to, you know, get food and drink at sporting events these days. So we literally had to create everything and very, very quickly do that. And our test run, we did have a preseason test run, but due to the weather and some other things, we only had a couple of thousand people show up. So it wasn't a true test run of the facility. Our first game was fantastic in many ways, but it was a complete disaster in terms of how we served fans. From concessions and bathrooms and a myriad of issues. And we were getting tweets and Facebook posts and emails throughout the night that a lot of people said, hey, this is great, but, and there was a big but, that they were in a concession line for 45 minutes, or they're having to wait 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, or all these different issues that came up. And that really was a bit of a social media meltdown for us. Wouldn't say it destroyed the buzz, because it was still great buzz, but it was a major issue. The newspapers picked up on it. And so we had to put together an immediate plan to respond to that on social media and find a way to fix those issues. We had a home game the next week, so we had 1 week, 6 days once you get to the next day to fix it. And so we put together a statement from Peter, the president, we put out on our website and promoted on Monday morning, pretty much first thing Monday morning, that said, you know, we acknowledge all these issues. We are deeply apologetic about it. It's not acceptable to have to wait 45 minutes to get a hot dog. We will have this fixed by Saturday. Here's how we're going to do it. Increasing labor in the concession stands, better training, all the things that in that 24 hours we'd already talked to our concessionaire about. In fact, they'd written to us on Sunday. It was good to wake up 10 a.m. on Sunday, and there's a long email from their regional director outlining how they were going to fix the issues that they'd had the night before. Because we don't directly do the concessions, but our concessionaire, who's very experienced nationwide, recognized things had gone badly wrong the day before. And again, the point wasn't just to promise that it would get better, even though we only had a week to do it. It was to deliver that the next Saturday, and we did deliver that. It's not perfect. It's still not perfect. It's you know, our stadium isn't a long-term solution, but it was 100 times better than it had been the previous game in so many ways, from the concession lines to parking to the bathrooms to signage. We just had this huge checklist, literally like 2 pages of things to fix in a few days, and we just plowed through it. People were working, I don't know how many hours you worked that week, Molly, but it was a lot. So we pulled it off. It's again not perfect, but fans knew that we had delivered on that promise. Things got better, and the feedback we got on social media that second game was just tremendous. People were tweeting, this is great, thank you for fixing the problems, and that was great buzz for us. And hopefully it showed the fans that we do care. We want them to have a good experience at our games, and if they tell us something's wrong, we will do what we can to fix it. Our email, if you email info@indy11.com, it goes directly to Peter Wilt. He gets all of our general inquiry emails, which is listed on our website, and then he forwards them on to the appropriate staff member to handle the issue, which is up to Molly.
Forward, Molly. See below. Please take care of this.
And he will copy the fan on that email,
Yeah.
so the fan knows it's gone to the staff member, and there's accountability there then for Molly, for the organization.
There is.
And the fan knows who is following up with it, and we try to get those issues taken care of as quickly as possible. And sometimes I wonder, why doesn't Peter just delegate that email box to someone else? And I realize it's because he wants to know what those issues are, and he wants to know they're being fixed. He's the president of the team. It's on him for the team to service its fans well. So if he's getting that direct line, he knows what's happening and he knows if it's being followed up and fixed or not. And that from day one, that's setting our staff that responsibility to take care of those issues when they arise. And occasionally we get a praise email to that inbox too, so that helps. But you do get a lot of people, and if they've taken the time to write, we know they care and we want to fix it for them. It's very rare that someone will take that time and they don't actually care about the team. So if they've done that, we have to make sure they're responded to and we solve their issue as best we can, or we explain to them why we can't, which is also sometimes the answer, hey, we can't do this because. But at least we're getting back to them and letting them know what the situation is, and that, again, helps a good feedback loop on social media.
That's great. And then to kind of expand on that, Josh, like we brought up earlier, the Brickyard Battalion obviously started through Facebook and communicates regularly through there. But I've gotten emails on Monday mornings after games where there was an issue in the section or there was something that went on in the same way that Tom had said, that they actually act on it and communicate about it. I get those messages from the group and see them on Facebook as well. So if you can give a little bit about how you guys do the same thing, listed online. You had mentioned to me about, you go on Reddit all the time and kind of see the conversations out there. And while, that can be a whole other, hornet's nest, at least you're out there listening and acting. So if you can kind
It is. And a lot of it stuff too is that we as a battalion, we don't like we like honest dialogue and commentary as it relates to team stuff, performance. We get a lot of that stuff on social media, like the team sucks, they're getting whooped, whatever it might be. That player sucks, this player sucks. Our job in a lot of ways is kind of be cheerleaders a little bit. Is that we're honest. We are honest. Social media allows you to be honest, and sometimes, I don't know, I call them Facebook warriors, whatever you want to call them, who want to be big and bad and scream and yell on social media, but you get them in a room like, hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. Hey. They want to give you a hug. They don't want any kind of conflict. Do you guys deal with that a lot? I mean, God, there's all kinds of social media warriors. What if they wear samurai gear when they're at home when they write this stuff or what? But but the thing is, though, is that I first tell you that I'll go out and personally challenge some of these people. If there's issues, and I'll invite them to come see me, or I'll invite them for a cup of coffee. Because I've said, for me, is that I don't need that person riling up the hornet's nest, whether it be in Reddit, whether it be in Facebook, whether it be in Twitter. Is I'm always engaging them, saying, what is it we're not doing that you need us to be doing? Same approach that Tom and the team takes, is that we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the larger group as well. And I would say the fan group can be a little rowdier and a little more needier than the general fan, if you will, because these people are generally, truly passionate about seeing this team succeed. And so what I try to think about is that all these people have this genuine passion. How can I fuel this passion the right way and direct it where I need it to go? Take the negativity out, address their needs, address their concerns, to say, what can I do you seem like you're really enthusiastic for the team. How can I get you more involved as opposed to have you be angry? And so how can I turn all that energy they're spending, they want to spend all that time being angry, how can I spend that anger energy into being something positive for the battalion or for the team? And that's something that's really, really difficult to do because it takes time, right? Because there's going to be a lot of haters. There's haters on everything. So that's what I try to do. I tend to find them in Reddit. I tend to find them a little bit on our Facebook page. But I think people are starting to generally get it. The soccer culture is a very unique sports culture, and I'll just touch on this briefly. There's a recent article, if you guys had a chance to see this, the Milwaukee Bucks. Am I familiar with them? They're building a soccer kind of supporter section within their NBA franchise. They want people to come and have this soccer supporter feel inside the NBA. I would argue that Roy Hibbert's section in the NBA section is very similar to what the soccer section is going to be. I'm just waiting for the Colts to catch on, right? And back to Tom's point earlier about this gold member event. Last time I saw Jim and Chuck and those guys sat down, Jim and Chuck Pagano, those guys sit down with the fans and have that same kind of forum. It's a very unique sports platform that soccer works in. That is very different than other sports, NBA, NFL, whatever you want to compare it to. But I'm seeing now more and more of that soccer culture leaning into American sports culture, which is really, really cool to see, and including the social media aspects and being really more acknowledging of the fans and their desires and wishes. So it's kind of cool to watch.
Okay. Jordan, if you mind going back one, we'll kind of touch on some more of the community-based events. This picture was taken, obviously, from the Indy 11 Facebook page. This was an event called Goals for Indy. And this one really stood out to me because soccer is so accessible. Lots of sports can be rather expensive. In soccer, basically, in lots of countries, actually where my father-in-law grew up in Indonesia, they don't even have shoes a lot of times. And their soccer ball is not a soccer ball. It's something that they found that they make into a soccer ball. But you can literally play soccer with anything, even just tennis shoes and an actual soccer ball. So the fact that they kind of engage the community. This was taken just out in an open field. I saw lots of pictures in street, like so in parking lots next to schools. So for a whole day, they went out and just into Indianapolis with the kids and just brought soccer to them, just let them play and let them go. And this is one of many. So I kind of, if you guys had some of your favorite community events, Molly, if you don't mind kind of sharing, what your favorite community-based event was, or just something that you've seen in bringing the community in, not only just the fan group, but actually the Indianapolis community.
Yeah, I'd say that's like the biggest success that we've had is engaging the community in a million different ways. Whether it's a yoga event or whether it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of other ones that we've done. That just every type of event you could possibly think of, we've been involved. And I think it's neat to engage people who wouldn't normally be a fan of soccer or we go into these games who are all of a sudden interested. This one particularly, Goals for Indy, we paired up with, maybe you guys have heard of Goalrilla. They make basketball hoops. And they make now these inflatable goals that basically they come in a bag and you can just blow them right up and they come in pairs. And we had over 100 different locations in March. So picture this, we're trying to start, there's 11 of us at this time, maybe 12, and we're trying to start a team in a month. And it's like March 11th of last year, or this year. 100 different locations across Indianapolis. We had the players go, we went, not to all of them, but, and we just had the community come out and play at each different location. So we put on social media, we'll be here, these players will be here. But the turnout was great, and it was just neat to see, people come out of the woodwork to come out and play. And it was all ages, kids and adults. And
Tom, if you don't mind kind of expanding on that, just some of the experiences you've had with bringing the community in and different events that you guys have done.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Unlike, again, to Josh's point, we tried to be not traditional, not like the Colts or the Pacers in their marketing approach, which is great. Obviously, it works for them. But we're a little different. We're more grassroots, we're more organic, and we have to be that way. We don't have a huge marketing budget. It's probably 10% of even the Indians, let alone the Colts or the Pacers. So we can't do a million flashy billboards or TV commercials or print ads. So engaging the community in all these different events. We did over 100 events last summer in a kind of warm-up awareness phase, and that meant, Molly and Gisho, our community relations director, they were out somewhere almost every day. Over 4 months to do 100 events, that means we were somewhere almost every single day. And whether that was a festival, a youth soccer event, or an arts event, that was key to us reaching different audiences and making them think, hey, we have a soccer team and they're interested in being at the Harrison Arts Center where we did an art show last February. We had we partnered with them and they asked their artists to create
11 different artists.
11 artists to create pieces based off our theme, the World's Game, Indiana's team, and we had a neat exhibition on the first Friday there. The Indy Fringe Partnership is another one we're really excited to be part of, the new building, and we're going to be doing events here. We're going to have an event here 11 times. 11 is a common theme you'll be noticing. But we'll have 11 different events in that theater next year. We'll do all different kinds of things, whether it's a stand-up comedy or a meet and greet with our players. So there'll be all different kinds of things that we'll do that will engage some of our community partners. We've done things of the Indy International Film Festival. So we just find that there's so much value there, and there isn't a ton of expense relative to sports teams' expenditure, but the genuine connections that you can build with people are much greater when you can, have a cocktail and talk about art and bring a different level to a conversation about sports. Because soccer is a bit of a niche sport. It's not yet quite mainstream. It's very close. But we had lunch yesterday with the Naptown Roller Girls, and that's one of our community partnerships. And the Roller Girls are very much on our same wavelength of how they promote. It's amazing what they do. They get 5,000-6,000 people they're expecting at all their bouts this year at the Coliseum, which is awesome because they have a practically zero marketing budget and they're all volunteers. So what they do is incredible. So we're going to be working more with them, supporting them. They come out to our games. They do our T-shirt toss at halftime. So we don't have cheerleaders like the Colts. We have the Naptown Roller Girls on their skates. firing T-shirts with a cannon into the crowd, and that cannon's actually pretty powerful and dangerous. Had a few near misses, but that for us is much more about what we want to be. You know, Peter and I often talk about we want to be the Sun King of sports in a lot of ways, or the Flat 12. Who is our actual craft beer partner, but the same.
Oops.
But both, both Flat 12.
Flat 12, please.
Both Flat 12 and Sun King, who were a little ahead of Flat 12. One thing they've done really well is their community engagement, their partnerships, their visibility, and being that little bit off kilter, but still having a great product and something that people appreciate in a different way than the mainstream beers. And soccer we see as similar, attracting a similar audience to craft beer. We had a craft beer night at one of our games, and we got about 500 people for a pre-game craft beer festival. So it's finding all those different ways to engage that are a little untraditional.
That's great. Jordan, if you don't mind going to that last slide, I got one last image I kind of want to share to tie up the conversation here. And this is on the Indy 11 Facebook page. This was taken, I believe, at the first home win against the Minnesota United, I believe, correct? And so for those of you that don't know, this is Ursal, the owner. And, to kind of to Tom's point about, Jim Irsay and Chuck Pagano don't sit down with fans and do meet and greets and talks, right? The Simons, you only know that because they sit next to a tall guy at the Pacers game, right? And they've got mauled, but you wouldn't necessarily know who they are. Ursal, after the first home win, is on the field with the fans taking pictures, right? And I've seen countless pictures and have friends that have been at games and Peter's taking pictures with them, right? So to kind of tie up the actual conversation portion of this, it really speaks to not only bringing the community in, but staying engaged with them and keeping them a part of it and really having it be a partnership and leveraging that for everybody's good. Colts fans don't rush the field, right? Pacers fans, yeah, whatever, yeah, we win, we lose. It's no knock on them, but it just really goes to show what they've been able to build in a short amount of time, and really that it's genuine. And Ursal is just as happy as the other two guys are, right? And he's a fan himself, and Peter's the same way. They're all fans of Tom and Molly, and Josh all are soccer. They're all fans too. So while they may work and be involved in it, they really shine through on their passion for it. And so I kind of wanted to end with that from the presentation portion. We have about 10 minutes officially, and so while y'all came to hear what they wanted to say and think, we want to make sure you guys get back something out of this as well. So we'll take some questions and make sure and ask them very loudly so we can get them picked up by the Great 12 Stars crew. And feel free to start, Mr. Bean.
So, you stressed the value of kind of the soccer niche sport, organic movement that created it. There's kind of a raw, almost a hyper-local dynamic to this, right? So, in your marketing efforts, how are you going to match kind of the tension between the need to succeed and be profitable and keep that same dynamic just in the culture and in your marketing efforts?
Feel free. Anybody go ahead and chime in.
I think that's a great question. I think what's interesting about soccer and its fan base is, unlike some of the other major sports, soccer fans know that the sport itself needs to be supported to succeed. They don't just presume soccer is going to keep growing and succeeding because they've seen it fail so many times. Josh has been a fan since the 90s and seen teams come and go here and around the country. The same story. It's only in the last 10 years that soccer has really established itself as anywhere close to profitable for some professional teams. Before that had never happened. So in terms of especially our corporate partnerships, it's interesting that I think a lot of soccer fans just at this stage appreciate that the corporations are supporting soccer. And Honda, our jersey sponsor, has gotten incredible buzz from their partnership with us, and our fans just think it's cool that local corporations, Honda's global, it's actually Central Indiana Honda dealers and Honda manufacturers of Indiana who are making the investment. And our fans, I think, are still at that stage where they want to connect with that. Now we have to be careful, especially on social media, not to sell every single asset and to be shoving sponsor messages down people's throats every 5 minutes on Twitter and Facebook. We do have sponsored messages, And we try to make them contests, things that are fun for fans to keep it engaging and interesting. So it's not just, hey, here's the latest car from Honda. It's, win a night in an Indy 11 suite courtesy of Honda by commenting or whatever it is. So there's a balance there, but we try to find ways to make sure our corporate messages are positive ones. Our goals for Indy community partnership, for example, was with Goalrilla, and Goalrilla sponsored the event, and actually all those goals, 100 sets of goals, they donated to the community. So all those groups, those youth groups that played that day were able to keep the goals and use them to keep playing in the future. So we try to find things that do have a legacy, that our marketing has a legacy with things like Goals for Indy. Our campaign for the upcoming year is called Indy Forever, and that ties back to the first TIFO display, which are the big banners that the BYB do. The first TIFO display on the very first home game had a massive Indy Forever banner on it. So we are trying to keep that feel to it. It's not always easy to do, and in 10 years when Indy 11 has its own stadium and 60 people working for it, I hope it still has the same feel, but it will change over time, and it's going to be really up to Josh and the BYB leaders and their whole group to keep us honest and to make sure we're not, I don't want to say selling out, because we have Honda on the front of our jersey. I can't say we're,
But we've had those
we're all
conversations.
organic,
We'll get into which ones they were, but we've had those conversations where we have a partner and they have the same partner, but there's a conflict of interest, and I'm trying to find a way to find a median and a middle ground. So, because soccer fans are fiercely loyal brand people too. So if you think about it from a global standpoint, the front, whatever's on the front of that team's jersey across the globe, that's whatever they're buying, they're supporting as well. So I'm not saying I'm running out buying a Honda tomorrow, but I'm saying there's a lot of folks that are actually fiercely loyal to the brands that are supporting the team. So
That's great.
We had a question online, if I could.
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
They were asking about when you kind of did the name announcement, there was obviously a lot of mixed feedback online, and I remember being there and kind of similar reaction from a lot of people. And names, you do it and then you move on, but how did you guys respond to that?
Yeah, that was a fun day.
the wind and everything else.
Yeah, at that point we had a staff of 5, so we were really staffed up from where we had been a month before, and we had 3. But it meant we had an awful lot on our plate that day. We were doing this big announcement at Monument Circle because we have Lady Victory on our crest, and we named the team after the 11th Regiment from the Civil War, so we had to tie into the Civil War monument on the crest, and 11 obviously being a soccer term for the 11 players on the field. But we had the announcement at the Circle, and I was actually trying to do 2 things at once. I was trying to help with the announcement sitting at the Starbucks at the Circle while launching our website and our Twitter and our Facebook, which all had to turn over at the same time.
And all our emails too.
Yeah, everything.
From
was
Pro Soccer
turning
to
over
Indy
at
11.
exactly the same time, which was a complete nightmare. And I couldn't even get a good internet connection at the Starbucks. The naming announcement was going on. It was really windy. This big banner that we had was falling over. Ursal wanted to stay up, and those of us that, realized that it wasn't a good idea that it should stay up, made sure it got down, but he wanted it to look great, so did we, and we were disappointed we had to take the banner down.
Because we were revealing the name.
Revealing the name.
And so the thing came down before we revealed the name, so we're all like, no, but this thing is like as tall as this, building.
So that all was just going a little harebrained, and people didn't get the name at first. They didn't understand what it meant. And immediately we were just getting killed on Twitter. I mean, we were just getting obliterated. 90% of the messages were negative in the first 30, 40 minutes. I literally ran back to the office, which is about 2-3 blocks from Monument Circle, because I
crying.
Crying. And it was, it was rough. And so I went in the office. I was the only person in the office, and I'm just sitting there staring at this Twitter stream that's just killing us. And I'm thinking, what do we do? We had an infographic that we put together with the designer of the crest, who's a local designer, and he had created kind of a guide to the name and the logo, the meanings, the city flag colors, the star from the city flag, Lady Victory, the Civil War, the checkers, which honor the Brickyard Battalion and the auto racing culture here. And as soon as we got that infographic posted, and we were able to respond to people and reply, say, hey, take a look at this and then let us know what you think, it turned around really, really quickly. And once they understood the name, some people will say, hey, you shouldn't have to explain a logo, it should be obvious. You can look at it both ways, that we're also asking people to do a little bit of digging and thinking, and once they did, they got it, and by the evening, it turned around to 90-10 in favor of the name and the logo. The polls that the IBJ were putting out all turned around, and that was, that was big for us in being able to turn that social media stream, because there was a couple of minutes there where it could have just gotten out of control, and we could have really lost the audience at that point. It was being picked up by national soccer media, and they found it even harder to understand the local connections, the checkers or the city flag colors, obviously having never been to Indianapolis. So it was really critical that we responded and went one-on-one with people. And the night before, we had met with BYB leaders and shown them the logo. Josh, I don't know if you want to...
No, I said we were damn dear near set on racing Indy FC because we've been talking about it for almost 2 years at that time. But we sat down with the team and they kind of took us through this rationale, and it made perfect sense. And it really makes sense for our city. If you look at our crest already had Lady Victory on it. We actually went, we're a non-for-profit, we actually went to the what's the board? I can't remember the name of the board now.
The
War Memorial Board, and actually asked permission to use Lady Victory as well. So it kind of broke the ground for them for Indy 11 to have that same conversation. So there's so many parallels that we were sold on it pretty quickly, and this is after already having green and black and white in our head, an entire vision and stadiums planned on, on social media that people had generated buzz around, and we also had to be on the same page because we weren't going to push forward together. It wasn't going to work. So.
That's great. Thanks for that question. Last official question, and then I know Josh has got some he has got to work, believe it or not. I think Tom and Molly, maybe you'll stick around for a little while. So
We don't work.
Some extra questions. You don't work?
We don't work.
No home games, you have to do anything. So we'll try and stick around a little bit for some questions, but last official one from Joe.
It's sort of a statement and a question at the same time. As the resident old guy, I think it may be the oldest guy. I didn't grow up, but Lorraine and I are the same generation. Paul's a little younger here. I love soccer because I can play it. My kids play it when they were toddlers, and soccer is not a game of Hoosiers of my generation at all, frankly. So I've learned to love the game by watching my kids play as they grew up. My question is, as a proud sponsor of the Battalion World Girls myself, and as a season ticket holder in 11, I noticed quite a bit of niche marketing that you guys do. And I want to hear particularly from Molly on this because I'm interested in what you do to attract female support, because it's been kind of a sausage fest up there. No offense. And I noticed a lot of engagement with the LGBT community as well. So can you talk about niche marketing in the LGBT community as well as things like with the roller girls and females?
I think it kind of starts with Peter, our GM. He's one of the most open, I welcome all, come one, come all. And I think he really allows us to kind of dig into whatever we want to as far as marketing. I know for me, so I played soccer my entire life, through college, after college. But I really like soccer because it's the games because it's social. You can drink beer, you can hang out with friends, and I love soccer too, and the boys are cute, but I just mean, it's something that I think encompasses something for everyone. So, I feel like whether you're a huge soccer fan or just someone who likes to be social, it's something that we can kind of dig into lots of different types of markets. I don't know what you help.
There's a lot of things there with the gay lesbian community in particular. I love the fact what other sports franchise reaches out to that community. If you guys didn't notice, I want to give a little bit of credit to Peter Evans and the guys that do the TIFO in their last TIFO. We actually had a gay and lesbian support. It was the same day as National Coming Out Day, so we actually had banners in support of that as well. And as I don't speak from the battalion, not that we're all liberal, but anybody that sits in our section is welcome. So it doesn't matter their sex, creed, whether they liked soccer 10 years ago or just learned it yesterday. We welcome anybody in our section. As long as you follow our code of conduct, you're more than welcome to sit in our section. We don't discriminate against anybody. So I think having those kind of messages are very unique in sport. That's like I see that again at a Colts or a Patriots game. And I've been to both Super Bowls, huge Colts fan, not knocking them in any way, shape, or form. It's just a different sports culture. And you can be more inclusive, and soccer gives the opportunity to reach out to niche communities because we are one. So we're like-minded in that, the fact that we can reach out those groups and say, we're like you. Not everybody's running to embrace us. How can we work together? So.
Yeah, I think being transparent as well through the whole thing has been great. You know, whatever questions they write in with, it's Peter right away saying X, Y, Z, you know, and saying exactly how he feels. So I don't know. I just think he welcomes and we welcome everyone with open arms.
Yeah, Molly was actually employee number 2, so she was the first person that Peter hired on a full-time basis, and you know, a lot of sports teams would generally get the 40, 50-year-old, you know, gray-haired executive who had worked elsewhere, but Peter went with, you know, a young female aspiring professional who didn't have a ton of real-life experience, had been a soccer player, but he saw in Molly that passion and that ability to connect in the community at our events and so on. And so she was, you know, one of the faces that we had out there from the beginning. So I think that played into it as well. And we try to make sure we have a diverse front office, whether it's full-time employees or our interns. That's one thing we always keep in mind, to make sure we are representative of the community. And we're open to all community partnerships, and we're not afraid of things that are a little bit different in whatever perspective that's looked at. Because we have more freedom, you know, maybe than the Colts, we're not working with the NFL. Even in soccer, we're not working with Major League Soccer. We're part of an independent league that gives us a lot of freedom too. So, and you know, Ursal is young and dynamic, and he's very engaged in the community. You know, it's really his donation to the Fringe that we're talking about here, his investment. So having an owner who's that engaged in the community as well. He's on a lot of art sports. He's passionate about that. So you know, it's from the top down and the bottom up, from the BYB up. So it's very unusual you have that in top and bottom meeting with a similar perspective on how we want to engage in the community.
The front office has a lot of freedom too. I mean, being number 2 employee, even though really technically you were working with them before I was, but kind of whatever I want to do as far as like, I don't know, opportunities that have come up that Peter's like, sure, run with it. That normally I think, you know, in a Pacers or a Colt, it's like, no, that's not, you know, in the guidelines. So I think that's been something neat for my career, to have so much freedom and creativity to market wherever.
That's great.
Any other, well, I guess that was our final question, sorry. So,
Yeah, well, yeah, we can talk to official questions, like I said, hopefully you can
Yeah.
stick around for a few minutes and we can if you have anything that you didn't want to ask.
Absolutely. You know, feedback's always welcome. Feel free to tweet at us, hit us up on our website, all the usual channels. Let us know what you thought, and if you have any other questions, obviously we're happy to connect you guys. Thanks everybody.